Yeah. Uh, Good morning, friends. We are now trying to talk about the irrigation methods. That is the third chapter in your syllabi. Uh, these irrigation methods cover many of the things, including micro irrigation methods. First of all, before going to the irrigation methods, how we have classified these irrigation methods, that is very important, and we will try to see that classification. Um First of all, traditionally the irrigation methods are surface. Within the surface you have so many other things. You can see here irrigation methods is surface irrigation, subsurface irrigation, sprinkler irrigation, then drip irrigation. Actually, these two together called micro irrigation. And of course, this is a very small portion of the total irrigation. In fact, even today, out of the total 68.4 some million hectares, just 1.2 hectares is only under micro irrigation. That means less than 2% is under micro irrigation. Remaining thing all in the survey, even today in India, in the surface irrigation only. The surface irrigation constitutes principally free flooding, flooding. Later we will go as a free flooding or control flooding. Then, of course, the furrow, then contour farming. So within that flooding, wild flooding, and then control flooding, within that furrow, you have deep furrow, corrugation. Again, within the deep furrow, straight contour. So whenever they come, we will try to explain them. Furrow within the surface irrigation, flooding, furrow, and contour farming. These are the major things. Within that flooding, you have major one is controlled flooding, which constitutes almost 80% of our irrigation method. This controlled flooding compared to all other things, this control flooding, that means within the control flooding, of course, you may have free flooding, contour laterals, but border strip, check basin, basin flooding, these constitute more than 60% of the total irrigated area. So that's why these are the very important methods, that is border strips, check basin, basin. But the order of the day should be sprinkler and drip irrigation, because we have to conserve water. We, in the coming days, water resources per capita is decreasing, and we are using more than 80% is of the fresh water is simply produced for food, and this water is continuously being depleted, and we have to save a lot of water only in the irrigation sector. There is no other sector which can save other way. In irrigation sector, if you save at least some 15%, which I have been telling, then we can meet other sectors' demand. So to meet these water conservation, we are resorting to these micro irrigation methods, particularly drip sprinkler irrigation methods, particularly these five states, almost Andhra Pradesh, of course, including Telangana, the Karnataka, Maharashtra, Maharashtra, Haryana, all these people, they have constitute around 78% of the irrigation in the micro. So other remaining states, something like Bihar, which you have just a few hundred hectares only under micro irrigation. So we have to increase this micro irrigation under a very PMSKY, that's Prime Minister's, centrally sponsored programs are very much on. We have to go on in this scheme. So next, let us see, before we actually go to the actual methods, how irrigation methods, what are the broad guidelines for this irrigation method? We must try to understand. The broad guidelines are simply the method chosen should able to distribute water uniformly, sometimes as thin as 2 centimeters and as thick as 10 centimeters. So the method what you have chosen must able to spread the water, that is the thickness of the water, that is the water column height in the plot, which is to be uniformly spread into the desired thickness. That is the first condition or a first guideline. And the method should have a minimum conveyance losses and labor cost. You see, many in the many fields, for example, for rice, you have simply let out the water, and then if you level the land, that will be sufficient to make it 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 any centimeters of water height. Whereas some cash crops or the vegetables, any other thing, you have to make small plots, and then try to put only in the furrows, only in the corrugations, only in the zigzag form, like that. There some labor is required. So it all depends upon the crop, and it should have a minimum conveyance losses and a minimum labor cost. Method should be amenable for mechanized farming. This is also very important today, as the labor cost is increasing, and if you want to maintain the production cost as it is, because the agricultural produce, the prices are not remunerative, so we have to keep these labor costs minimum. So mechanized farming is coming in a big way. So one must have a mechanized farming provision always. Keeping that in mind, we must provide choose the irrigation method. It should give maximum yield while using minimum water. That is always there. More crop per drop, that is the slogan. So in this direction only we are trying to use these methods. Otherwise, earlier we do not have all these methods. Simply some flooding is good enough. But as the days are progressing, as the civilization is growing, people are resorting to the only that much water just needed for the plant we are resorting to. Otherwise, it is going, what we are wasting a lot of our fresh water, which otherwise we can utilize for many other purposes. Okay. So the you can see first, as you know, surface irrigation methods we try to deal. In all these methods, in all the surface irrigation methods, the one common point is there should be properly constructed water distribution system. That's how we see the 80% of irrigation infrastructure is now only for the surface methods. There is a dam, there is a canal, there is a field canal, there is a plots and all those things. So it is a adequate control over the water, which makes them to flow in the fields. And for this purpose, proper land preparation is very much important. You see, land preparation, it should be uniform for the distribution of this irrigation water, which has been brought several hundred and even thousands of kilometers from the source to the point of the distribution, that is your plot. So there must be a proper land preparation. So in that surface irrigation, you have wild flooding method. Before we go for actual flooding methods, this is a water is spread or flooded on rather smooth flat land without much control or prior preparation. You see, so for wild flooding, there is nothing like prior preparation like thing. Whenever you find water is in excess of the requirements, you try to utilize it by putting that allowing that water to flood in the rather smooth flat land. That means at a particular course of river you must choose for that. So off late this point is more important when we know that this climate change have a lot of problems on evenly distribution rainfall. So sometimes we are flooded, sometimes we are drought. So whenever this flood water is available, we try to recharge the ground so that groundwater can also be improved with this wild flooding, if not for the crops. So this is very important point. We have to use this flood water also by properly diverting from the river and then utilizing it. It is practiced when irrigation water is abundant, like during floods. That's what, for example, in this year, the last monsoon season, both in Godavari and Krishna, we have seen the lot of flooding that is going to the sea. Anyway, some water has to be released to the sea. That is called environmental flows. But otherwise, also there is a lot of water. So that water must be utilized properly by these wild flooding methods. the controlled flooding, this is start of our irrigation methods. First, we see the free flooding. It is irrigation by plots, commonly used in India. The field is simply divided into number of small sized plots, which are practically level. Water is admitted into these plots at the higher and at the supplies cut off as soon as the lower part of the plot has received the sufficient depth. This is a very simply having a plots. I think we have a figure also here. I think that figure is in the next slide. Yeah, just hand drawn figure is simply scanned and put here. Of course, it is sufficient to convey the message. You can see this is the main ditch, the canal in which, I mean, field channel in which water is flowing. The entire field is divided into a number of equally squared plots or any other size, no problem. The size of the plot depends on the porosity and other things, because you cannot have a bigger size if the porosity is more. So anyway, this water is trying to get diverted under controlled manner to this plot, to this plot, to this plot, like that, and there will be a control here. So it's a very simple, straightforward method where you can free flooding is resorted to. Then comes the contour laterals. See, this method is applicable for steeper terrain. Under steeper terrain, the field is cut by relatively cut by a dense network of small contour laterals. See, this free flooding you can resort to when the land is level, but when the land is very steep, you cannot have that method. But whereas you can have a contours depending on the level of the ground. You can see, I think for this also we have a small figure hand drawn. You can see, of course, these are not so. Of course, yeah, this is the main ditch, means main supplying canal. Okay, and the contour laterals. These are the laterals. This is a check. That means water is not allowed beyond this point, and these are the small laterals. From this point, water is simply oozed out into this, and then making this entire region. See, the contour depends upon the level of the ground. This means this is one level, this is another level. So for which water is supplied. This is one level, this is another level, this is another level. So of course, this concept comes time and again for each and every method. We are simply using here in the free flooding also, which comes into the other method. So now we have completed just two initial methods out of the total array of the methods. You can see just under surface irrigation, under flooding, wild flooding. We have some two things. One is a controlled flooding and then contour levels. Now, this under this controlled flooding, you have free flooding and contour levels. So that means these two we have completed. Therefore, we try to go to one of the most important border strips and then check basin. These are the very two important methods. As I said earlier, also more than 50% of not only 50%, even 60% of the area under irrigation is covered with this kinds of methods. I think we will stop this video here. We try to reach border strips and check basin in the next video. Thank you very much.